Welcome to the Thematic Edge. I'm Marvin Barth of Thematic Markets and Seriously Marvin. I don't have my co-pilot Mark Farrington of the Global Watchtower with me today, but I do have a very special guest. Senator Ede Dafinone of Delta Central District in Nigeria is joining me today. Welcome to the program, Senator.
Thanks, Marvin. Happy to be here.
Thank you. And one of the reasons why I'm really excited to have Senator Dafinone with us is Nigeria is a critically important country, especially in the changing world that we're seeing around us. Some of the things that Mark and I have been talking about for the last couple of episodes. Nigeria is not only the largest population in Africa, literally almost a quarter of Africa's total population at 220 million people. It is the largest economy. It is full of resources. It's well known as an OPEC member, an exporter of crude petroleum, but it also has a lot of other critical minerals, increasingly recently rare earths. It is a multicultural society of 347 different tribes, 500 languages, roughly evenly split between Muslims and Christians. That whole society has been made to work since independence. And it is also increasingly one of Africa's leading cultural centers. Lagos fashion is one of the fashion centers, the film centers of Africa. It is also increasingly a manufacturing and tech center, a lot of offshore development in terms of the educated population of programmers, of creative artists, of technicians, all centered particularly around Lagos. And it's increasingly a manufacturing hub. And this is one of the reasons why Nigeria is critically important and a linchpin not only for Africa, but increasingly to the entire global political economy. And in an economy that's shifting as much as we've seen recently, this makes it very important. This is one of the reasons I'm really very excited to have you here. But before we get started on digging into some of those issues, can you tell our audience a bit about you? Who is Senator Ede Dafinone?
Thanks, Marvin. First of all, I'd like to say that Senator representing Delta Central, and that position I started in 2023. But before that, my day job, as I'd like to call it, was as a practicing chartered accountant. So I qualified in the UK 1989, I think it was, quite a few years back.
Yes.
And went home to join the family business. By coincidence, we are, as a family of chartered accountants, in the Guinness Book of World Records, having 6 of us, my father, my 2 brothers and 2 sisters, being members of the English Institute of Chartered Accountants. So a family of chartered accountants, my day job then and for 30 years plus afterwards was as a practicing chartered accountant. But aside from that, I've delved into the arts. I'm trustee of the Guild of Fine Artists of Nigeria. Also was on the board of the Nigerian Conservation Foundation, which is the largest environmental NGO in the country. Was on that board for about 33 years and left as chairman for the last 8 years. So I consider myself also an environmentalist, and I still fight for environmental causes in my position. Also a manufacturer. So we have a rubber factory and rubber plantation within my constituency. So we grow rubber, process it, and export around the world. In that capacity as a manufacturer and exporter, I also sat as chairman of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria's export section and helped to promote non-oil exports for the country. So I've done quite a few other things. I should mention also that I sat on the council for the English Institute of Chartered Accountants for about 4 years and was also chairman of the Members Advisory Board for Africa for that same period. So I've delved into quite a few different sectors before coming into politics. As a senator representing my people, I'd like to bring development and empowerment to my people, and I'm focusing on human capital development as my primary target for my first term in office. Thank you.
Well, this is fantastic because there are so many different aspects of your career that are going to be important for, I think, the questions that we talked about. First of all, your international perspective, that you were educated abroad, you have worked with international institutions, you have been involved in all these NGOs, you've been involved in a manufacturing trade association, actually actively active in manufacturing yourself. And of course, your current role as a senator representing your people in Delta Central State, and how that interacts with Nigeria's position with the rest of the world. And I'd like to start there with the we'll start with the tough stuff, and then we'll get into the more fun stuff that I think is the opportunity that exists in Nigeria. But Nigeria has been in the news in some unfortunate ways recently. This is yet another country that the US has decided to bomb. But one of the differences that happened with Nigeria is that this was in full concert and cooperation with the Nigerian government. But one of the things that was quite intriguing to me is, of course, the very different spins that the two sides gave to it. So President Trump, of course, makes this some sort of sectarian issue. They're killing Christians in Nigeria and we're going to stop it. What you hear in Nigeria is this is about domestic terrorist groups infiltrating from the Sahel in the north of Nigeria and countering that terrorist insurgency into the country. What is your perspective on this? How would you describe this situation? And most importantly, what are the grounds of commonality between Nigeria and the United States in this and other issues?
Thank you. You started off by saying one of the countries the United States has decided to bomb. That just puts a wrong taint on it completely. The missiles that were launched in collaboration with our government. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't a case of the Americans deciding to bomb. From the Nigerian government's perspective, and here I speak not as an expert on domestic terrorism or government policy, but my private views, I should say. The Nigerian government has been fighting local and regional terrorists within the country for 10, 15 years plus. And in doing so, we collaborate with governments around the world to get support where and when we need it. And this attack on the terrorists is part of that collaborative movement. You have terrorists in your backyard and you have friends, big friends, powerful friends who can offer support. I don't think any government should turn down that assistance, and we didn't either. It's hoped that sort of collaboration will speed up our move to eradicate the domestic terrorists completely. They're disruptive to farming, disruptive to the economy, spoiling tourism, and it's bad business, not just for us, but the global impact it brings to the surrounding countries as well, and possible export of this terrorism to other countries is something we don't want to be part of, definitely. Mm-hmm. So we're happy to collaborate with our friends in order to reduce the problems of terrorism we have at home.
So I was a bit provocative there in the way I phrased that, but this is in part because this is often the way that the Trump administration has been cast in multiple different episodes around the world, whether it was bombing Iran, in that case, clearly not with the government's permission, or the most recent operation in Venezuela. All of those things have been, I think, a shock to a lot of the world, and really emphasize that the world has changed. We know We no longer live in a world where we have a global policeman and a sort of international rule of law. We are definitely moving towards more of a great power competition world. One of the things that Mark and I have discussed in our last two podcasts, and I'm wondering how a country like Nigeria looks at this change, particularly given that, as I emphasized, in terms of the opportunities and especially the resources and talent and strategic importance of Nigeria, it is a key battleground between the sort of two great emerging powers here, the United States and China. How does Nigeria see its role in this, and how does it navigate between those two?
Let me firstly go back to addressing something I missed on your first question, and that is how the spin, as you put it, from different perspectives. The initial rhetoric coming out of the American government was that the attack was to prevent the killing of Christians. And in truth, Nigeria is made up of Christians and Muslims in nearly equal balance, as you said. Our president is Muslim, but his wife is Christian. So, I mean, just to put it in perspective,
it is an amazingly multicultural country and a success story, I would say.
Yeah, and in terms of the terrorists, they are killing Christians as well as Muslims. And I think the later noises coming out of America recognize that. So they have tempered down the killing of Christians as a basis for the attack. It's not that. The terrorists are killing both sides. It's not specific to Christians or Muslims. The world order, and again, I'm not an expert, but from a layman's point of view, there are still rules, global rules. There are still global courts, and I believe that for the world order to be maintained, those rules must be followed.
Yes.
A society without rules does break down completely. So and this is my personal view, the Americans going into Venezuela to arrest the president and his wife for their alleged role in drug trafficking, I could say, makes them look like the policemen of the world. And I'm not sure that they have such a right or such a power to do that. But even more concerning from my perspective, yes, policemen of the world, okay, let's park that. What authority should they now have to run the country of Venezuela? And if you put that in perspective, what that means is that every single head of state around the world should now be worried that they could be accused of a crime and arrested, and the country's leadership is handed over to, this is not good for the world order, definitely. So there must be a balance, and there must be rules, and there must be processes that are followed in order for the world to move forward as brothers and friends, to feed, develop the masses that are not having a good life as they could. And that should be a priority rather than, so my personal view, the world order has to be maintained, the rules must be followed, and there should be no exceptions.
Yeah. So what's really interesting to me, I mean, there's many interesting aspects of Nigeria, but one of the ones that really struck me last year is I was doing a lot of research into global attitudes on President Trump, because he is such a controversial figure. And one of the things that really stood out is the contrast between what has been increasingly called the global South and the global North or Western countries. Western countries popular opinion is very negative in general on President Trump in much of the global South. Actually, he's much more popular, or at least according to polling last year, which may have changed. I'd like to get to that. And what really stood out to me is the two countries where he is most popular are India and Nigeria. And so I guess one question is, where does that come from? And do you feel that's changed after the interactions that we've seen over the course of trade negotiations? Some of these instances, as you said, the U.S. acting as policeman in Venezuela, or its cooperation with Nigeria. Has that changed? And where did that sort of positive feeling, or relatively positive feeling towards President Trump come from?
I think we all have to remember that he won the American election. So
yes,
and he did so on the back of a popular vote, which indicates that a very significant number of Americans stand with him on his policies. And that same feeling would be translated across countries around the world. Both India and Nigeria have a lot of former citizens or current citizens that are living in America. And so there would be that link in terms of support for President Trump. A lot of people like his style. A lot of people see him as somebody who backs up his talk with action, somebody who is ready to take on the hard challenges. And because of that, he has a popularity that many of us wouldn't understand. I mean, I don't agree with so many of his policies, but I can appreciate why he is liked and why he's popular.
So that's actually a really interesting, transition to something I wanted to ask about. Is that, very different temperament, what some might say, and certainly the way he presents himself. But President Tinubu has been, in many ways, it has a lot of similar characteristics. He has shown a very clear willingness to sort of break down convention and really challenge issues within Nigeria and create reforms. He's done a lot of significant reforms, whether it was eliminating the fuel subsidy, unifying the exchange rates. He's taken a lot of steps that few Nigerian leaders have been willing to in the past. Do you see similarities there? And is that something as well? Is that same sort of political movement that people want to see someone who actually does something?
I did an interview about 2 months ago, and I described our President Tinubu as being the best prepared president Nigeria's ever had. A chartered accountant, university degree holder, former governor of Lagos State, a national political leader, and so a unifying force. I see him as a president who would want to leave a lasting legacy. As so many people get into government, and it is in their last few days or months they start thinking about, what legacy have I left? You can see from his actions that President Tinubu is working on his legacy from day one. Tough decisions. You mentioned the fuel subsidy. It was consuming an incredible amount of our resources. He stopped the electricity subsidy. Again, a drain on the national resources. The unifying of the exchange rate was another subsidy that was going nowhere. And now we're on to his tax reforms. These four alone are decisions taken by a man who is not afraid to break the eggs to make the omelette.
Yeah.
And he is doing so knowing that this is what he needs to do to get the country back on track. He has taken decisions that have given our people a period of hardship. But in the last few months of 2025, the numbers are beginning to show that the economy is getting better. And I want to believe that throughout this 2026, that it will be a period where the economy starts to get into better shape and there is a beginning of a period of prosperity. What a lot of people don't recognize is that he comes into office after the COVID period, where world economies went through a really hard time. And after that COVID period, there was a global recession that was on as well. So we are all coming out of that period, and Nigeria was no less hit than many, many other countries. And this now is the rebound, and he is taking those decisions that will lead to an economy that will be long-lasting, with a legacy that people will remember for a long time.
Okay. And what do you see as the key priorities and things that he hopes to achieve? Like, so you mentioned that he wants to create a legacy here, and I think that is a very good description of him. And certainly, I know from our previous conversation, you said he's left a legacy as governor of Lagos in terms of tax collection and reform there. He actually had a lasting impact. So I guess my question is, what would you describe as the key things that you see coming out of a Tinubu presidency for Nigeria, and can they last beyond him?
Yes, I think they can do. An economy where we were being drained by rent seekers. Okay. So the subsidies that I just mentioned are a huge drain on the economy for the benefit of a couple of dozen people. Those resources would now be shared across the nation to develop health, infrastructure, industry, power. And Nigerians are an industrious people. Given infrastructure that will allow them to work, allow them to grow, the country will be one of the fastest growing economies in Africa in no time, in my opinion, in no time at all.
You mentioned something, and I'm going to come back to this in the opportunity section, but I do think that this is a really amazing factoid that, one of the things that I see as Nigeria having a tremendous advantage in global trade around the world is this large Nigerian diaspora. Yeah. And you mentioned this point about Nigerians being very industrious people. Little known fact, Nigerian Americans have a higher median income than native-born Americans, right? So you can see this industriousness. You come to the United States, you're an immigrant there, and still you're doing better than the native population. So there really is a tremendous amount of, I think, potential opportunity there. But before we get to those opportunities, we've talked about President Tinubu and his priorities. What about you? What are you trying to do, first of all, for Delta Central, but also for broader Nigeria? What is your vision, and what are you trying to focus on? You mentioned your environmental focus, you mentioned your educational focus. How do you see those fitting into the broader agenda, and what do you hope to achieve?
So aside from the environment, education, and empowerment, I'd like to see a more developed Delta Central. We went through a period, early 90s, I think it started, where the militants in the Niger Delta disrupted activities of the major industry, which was oil, within my territory, the Delta Central Senatorial District. And the militancy has gone away completely now, but those industries and companies are yet to come back and recognize that this is somewhere where they can invest. The governor of the state is putting infrastructure in place that will encourage that. I see my role also as encouraging not just multinationals and local investors to invest, but also to see what resources can be garnered from the international community, the EU, etc., that can help hasten the development of local industries. We've identified at different levels agriculture that can be done at smallholders and largehold farms. Also looking at resources that can be tapped from aside from agricultural products, but also oil-based service companies that our people can invest in and have developmental impact, not just on the region, but on the country as a whole.
So let's turn to this point about opportunities in Nigeria. You've just said that you expect Nigeria to be the fastest growing or among the fastest growing as these reforms take place. And certainly all the potential is there. And as we discussed before, Nigeria has plentiful resources. It does have a large base of human capital to draw upon. While you're looking to raise the educational level in Delta Central, it is very much the case that you have in part because of the large population and the sort of focus on education in the country, you do have a core group of extraordinarily well-educated people, mostly concentrated in Lagos at this point. But how do you see opportunities? You, in one of your prior NGO roles, you led the Manufacturers Association's export group. Where do you see opportunities in Nigeria, not just for Nigerians, but also, as most of our audience is probably non-Nigerian, what is there for foreign investors, both individual investors and also people looking to build factories, develop new opportunities? Where do you see those in Nigeria?
Let me start my response by looking at the area of capacity. So you mentioned median incomes of Nigerians living in America. There's another statistic that I saw some years back that indicates that of the non-Americans within America, the percentage of Nigerians that are professors within that population is the highest among the non-indigenous Americans. And what that tells you is the potential that is exported. We don't have such similar statistics at home, but if you translate that to those that are within Nigeria, then you begin to understand the potential. Nigerians are in the forefront globally in terms of music, in terms of cinema, movies. We are coming up in terms of art, and that's something that I'm fighting for. And also to come in terms of food as well. So, and I say that to just indicate that there is a leadership potential in many, many areas. In terms of potential areas of investment, Nigeria is recognized as an oil-producing country, but we also have very, very significant gas reserves. And that is known, and that also presents significant opportunities for investment. What is also coming through in the last few years are the potential for solid minerals. There are a lot of very, I call them new minerals that are being found in the northern and middle belt of Nigeria that will bring significant prosperity when they start to officially capture the statistics behind that, because a lot of it isn't being captured at the moment. But aside from that, in terms of agriculture, because of the size of the country, we can grow just about anything, from apples and grapes to rice and cassava. The opportunities for agriculture on a large scale are again tremendous. The greatest potential of Nigeria, though, and we've alluded to that already, is in terms of the capacity of the people. So Nigerians show up all around the world, capitals, in many, many leading roles. And that capacity within the country is something that allows us to have an edge over many other countries. Once that is harnessed and the opportunities start to arise, infrastructure is available, and we're seeing that already. We have young men breaking into the tech field and selling their companies from Nigeria, for hundreds of millions of dollars. So you know, we will also start to show up more and more in that space. The potential is tremendous. Opportunities to invest, also because of the population size, 220 million people is a market in its own. It is, I think, 20 to 25% of the population of Africa. And just coming into that market to produce and sell enables a company to have a sizable chunk of quite a lucrative market. So many opportunities. In the background, with the government creating a more stable environment, both in terms of exchange rate stability, in terms of security, more and more companies have started already to invest. The statistics are showing that the direct foreign investment numbers are going up throughout 2025 and are expected to increase again in 2026.
And you've cast the, we've referenced this several times, the sort of diaspora and how successful Nigerians have been abroad. And you've cast that as, well, that has the potential to take place in Nigeria as well. But how do you see that diaspora itself? I mean, it seems to me that is a massive underutilized asset for Nigeria in terms of, opening up trade networks, being able to bring back capital to Nigeria. Because many of these people, as we've talked about, are extraordinarily successful. So how do you see their role in Nigeria's success?
I think the Indians have the best system for taking advantage of their people in the diaspora. And very recently also, I understand the Ghanaians have put together a model where the citizens abroad are encouraged to invest in companies and organizations within Ghana. I believe that with the stability of the economy and a stronger government at home, more and more Nigerians will recognize that the best investments they can make for their future is within Nigeria. People around the world are looking for emerging markets, fastest growing markets, and you have that in your backyard. And this is an environment you're familiar with, you grew up with. And if the government continues at this pace, it is very, very likely that the resources that would flow into Nigeria from the diaspora could exceed the amount of money we're making from oil. This is how big that picture is. And I think it's around the corner.
Okay, this is fantastic. Is there anything I should have asked you about that I didn't ask you about, Senator?
No, I touched on my love of art and something I was working on.
And by the way, I should mention your daughter is a designer, and I've actually even seen her designs in magazines in London. So to the point of this, art leadership is actually being exported at this point. I mean, your daughter is actually an example of this.
And we have many designers at home that are doing programs in America, France. Our designers are global. It is less, is not as well known because they move as individuals and some of them are relocated, but it will get to a point where it is recognized that Nigerian designers have something special and new to offer the world. We're getting there, and yes, my daughter is part of that, thankfully.
And I'll give her a plug since you're probably not or too modest to do so. It's Onitary. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Yes, correct.
So for anyone who's interested in that, check it out. But I just want to thank you for making time in your busy schedule to sit down with us and talk to us about the opportunities in Nigeria. I do want to say for our audience, one reminder, nothing here should be considered investment advice. This is informational purposes only. You need to do your own homework, but we are very fortunate to have you on the show, and I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you very much, Senator.
Okay. Thank you, Marlon. Pleasure. Thank you.